Hello, everyone. My name is John Deckert, and I'm a freelance videographer and photographer based in Northwest Florida. And I've been debating for a while now on the decision to pack everything up and move to LA. And, everybody can do some research, that kind of thing, but it's really done very little to help make the jump. And something that can really be kind of scary. It's culture shock. I know some people now, and through doing a little bit of thinking, I do know a handful of people there, but it would be a big change. And so that's why I'm doing this, and that's where my guest today comes into play. Today I'm talking with Fon Davis, who is currently a creative director for New Deal Studios and is also an instructor and guest host with the Stan Winston School. Now, Fon, I like to think, has a wealth of experience under his belt, including work on some of my personal favorites, including the Star Wars saga of movies, the Matrix series, Nightmare Before Christmas, and something I was very surprised, but pleasantly surprised to see, Guardians of the Galaxy. So, how you doing today, Fon?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the show. It's exciting to hear you might be joining us down here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I just made the leap myself. I've only been down here since December. So
Okay.
I had this same kind of internal debate.
hmm And we will get all into that. And you say it's a show, and maybe it'll become one. Right now, it's a little of an experiment. It was something that I pitched to you, and you're like, hey, this sounds like it might be a good idea. Can we record it? And so I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Well, I think it
yeah.
is. I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing the discussion today. So
And that's why we're here.
excellent.
So I touched on it, but can you give me your background?
Basically, I've been working in the motion picture industry for about 25 years. I've worked on over 30 feature films now, and at different capacities. So I actually started in the industry as a carpenter and worked my way up in through model making at Industrial Light and Magic, and doing concept design and concept model making with Disney and Leica Entertainment up north, and then I started doing a lot of educational material, lectures, and talking to schools, and came out with my own DVDs, and then also just recently moved to Los Angeles, where I'm working as a creative director at New Deal Studios, and also teaching with the Stan Winston School. So moving here basically has enabled me to continue doing the kind of work I was doing in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I spent most of my last 25 years.
Okay. And you touched on a few things there, including, I mentioned the Stan Winston School, but you also mentioned DVDs and that kind of thing. And that provided additional evidence that I first noticed the vibe that you were giving me when I started talking to you. And it was just, this guy, he has this knowledge, and he pays attention, and that was what made me want to be like, hey, Fawn, what do you think of this? And so I really appreciate all that you've done so far and are clearly continuing to do. What
Yeah,
would you say? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you. You know, it's one of those things I kind of have grown to really enjoy giving back to the creative community, just because I've gotten so much out of it myself. My entire career has been based on other people sharing their knowledge with me. I certainly wouldn't be where I am without the help of many generous and open people with their knowledge and their information. So it's kind of something I feel like I should do.
Sure. Do you feel like that is a common thing, or do you feel that you were just fortunate enough to have those people around you? And
You know, it's actually changed quite a bit over the years. I've been very fortunate. The Bay Area film community is pretty small, pretty tight knit. Once you become a part of that family, and I will call it a family because it really feels like that, you spend a lot of time with each other on these movies.
sure.
Um, but you know, some people really guarded trade secrets, and they call them trade secrets for a long time. But all that is kind of blown wide open over time because of kind of the maker movement and the make culture and the whole idea that it's shameful to hang on to this information. And I latched onto that movement very quickly because I always thought it was beneficial to everybody to share information, and it just makes us all grow and become better and faster and more creative, and you get nothing but positive things out of it. And the more you can do as a group of artists, the more work you get. So it's not really as scary as a lot of people thought it would be to share information. It's beneficial. It's not. No one's going to come and replace you, you know. So.
Right. And, it might be a little grim to think of, but, there will be a day when you won't be around, and if you want the medium to keep going, you
Yeah.
gotta have people that know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes for everybody in every type of occupation that is a specialty, you know. So,
Hmm.
especially with film, I mean, so much of it is troubleshooting and using the different tools, knowledge, and materials you gain in ways that no one has ever done before. That it takes a lot more to teach it, I think, than it does in other fields. You know,
Hmm.
it's not a repetitive field. You know,
Right.
it's
Well,
constantly changing.
well, it's good to hear that that's becoming the case, because that's one of the scary things that, you know, get out there. I don't know anything. It's like, oh, well, good luck, guy.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely secrets. There's secrets to
Sure.
succeeding. Um, and a lot of it just comes down to the same work ethic that our parents have always tried to teach us, um, showing up to work on time, finishing what you start, getting along with other people, um, learning how to learn, on the job. It's all it's actually harder than you would think to build a team of artists, because a lot of people are missing some of the components you need to survive in the professional work industry.
Sure.
Uh, there's a lot of creative people out there and a lot of enthusiastic people, but to take it that next step is actually underestimated by, I think, a lot of people. I see that a lot with students. I didn't used to think the way I do now. I used to think that anyone could succeed if you put your mind to it, but I think it takes a little extra, and it does take a certain amount of aptitude to have the ability to do the work, because it is demanding in every way you can imagine. So.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I know just in my experience, but it's, you know, small potatoes comparatively. But what would you say first interested you in um, video production, or more specifically, what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Um, I guess I always had an interest in film. I grew up on the Star Wars movies and Ghostbusters and Close Encounters, and a lot of I was a real big fan of science fiction and fantasy movies, but I also really liked storytelling, and I liked things that inspired my brain to think about things or to be creative and imagine worlds unseen and all those kinds of things. And I just kind of had that creative fire, and I had to do something in the creative arts. I didn't exactly know what it was when I started, and luckily I never had to pick, because I've been lucky to have gotten into a position where I um, have a lot of variety in what I'm asked to do. So, and that's really what I think drives me and keeps me in the industry, is the fact that it's always changing. There's always new challenges. I always said, if I stop learning, then I'm going to switch jobs, and
Yeah.
so far it's never happened. So, um, Yeah, I don't know. In a weird way, I think I was just kind of born to do this. That's the way it feels. That sounds a little maybe overly dramatic, but it is kind of where my head is.
Yeah. Well, they say, if you can do something that you enjoy, then it's not really working.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd agree with that. It feels a lot like work sometimes. A lot of times.
Oh, okay. Well,
We actually always joke about it. We say if you could take away the budgets and schedules, you could call it play.
sure, sure.
But it's those things that keep it rooted in the world of real work.
You'd probably get more sleep and have more of your original hair color without that kind of thing, too.
Yes, yes, that is true.
Very cool. Now, I don't know of many people who are originally from LA, and you said that you moved to LA from the Bay Area, but you weren't originally from there, were you?
No, no. I was pretty much in the Bay Area since I was a teenager, so I kind of call that's if I had to pick a hometown,
Hmm.
that would be it. My dad was military, so we moved around a lot when I was young.
Sure.
Um, but that's where I finally settled down, and I've been there for 25 years in my career. So it was a really, really huge decision to move down. I didn't really ever want to move down. I really wanted to make it work in the Bay Area because there were so many great creative people there, so many great companies there. I just really
Hmm.
wanted to stay in that world. But as time went on, the the amount of work that the Bay Area film industry and commercial industry was doing started to decrease at such a pace that it was no longer a sustainable place to have a thriving career.
Hmm.
And I thought about where I might move, and I kind of always knew in the back of my mind if I needed to, I could move to Los Angeles. And the reason Los Angeles becomes the obvious choice is because this is the epicenter for the business.
Sure.
Um, Movies do shoot all over the world, and I'm open to going wherever the productions go. I might be in Canada, I might be in New Mexico or New York, but that's always been the case. I've just
Hmm.
been able to root myself in the Bay Area. Now, here, it's been really, really surprising. I've actually liked it quite a bit, and it's not as scary or as difficult as I thought it might be to reestablish myself somewhere new. Um, Partly because of the way it all happened. The but this was definitely the obvious choice, the obvious place to be, just because it's so easy to take a meeting with somebody because instead of saying, hey, I want to have a meeting with you, and you're in Los Angeles, I'm in San Francisco, and I have to say, well, I can fly down in 2 weeks, or trying to schedule a bunch of
Hmm.
meetings on that one day I'm in Los Angeles. It was getting really, really difficult, and I was spending a lot more time here than there. So I'd be driving back and forth a lot, or flying back and forth a lot. And then finally, I just felt like I had actually moved down here already, and I was just in denial.
You
But
just didn't have
yeah,
all of
so
your stuff.
yeah, exactly. Now I got to bring my stuff. But it was you know, now it's like, if someone calls for a meeting, and I'm like, okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes or an hour. So it's a lot different. It's a lot easier to navigate this industry being based in Los Angeles.
Hmm. Well, and that kind of brought me to another question that maybe not necessarily for you because um, I'm in Florida, which is it's the other side of the country.
Almost exactly, Rob.
Almost. Pretty close. And so for me, working on different gigs that the larger ones that'll come through, and you get to talking on cruise because it'll be multiple days, and you start asking, oh, where do you think, where are you living, where do you think you would go? And over my experiences, it's, well, there's Chicago, they do a lot of commercials, there's Nashville, they're really starting to blow up. They've turned from a 15-minute town into a 25-minute town. You got Austin, they're doing a lot of documentaries. They're doing this. And, of course, now they're calling, um, well, Atlanta's getting huge because of Tyler Perry. He's opened several studios, and I think he's opening more now. And you got Georgia.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, maybe just because it's always been that way, or because in movies and television they say, oh, if you want to make it big, you go to Los Angeles. But in your decision, was it always going to be LA, or did you have that internal thought as well?
Well, I did look into working in a lot of these locations, and what I had found in talking to my friends, because I did a similar thing. I reached out to people that I knew that lived down here. And a lot of them, actually, they do work in Georgia, and they do work in North Carolina, and they do work in New Mexico and New Orleans and
Mm-hmm.
all these different places, but they're based here.
Sure.
So so to me, I don't feel like I had to decide on any of those locations because I can still work in any of those locations. I just wanted to base myself here because this is still where everything starts.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where I wanted to be for myself, and that's not necessarily the best decision for everybody. I do know people that have moved to some of these other locations and done quite well.
Sure.
I think the key, obviously, is you've got to weigh out the pros and cons for your particular situation. And if you have an in at a particular studio or company and you can get a job, I say follow the money. Get the job.
Right.
But if you are starting out or maybe even well established and you just want to explore and maybe not lock yourself into one of those locations, then yeah, LA seems pretty ideal. There is a lot less production here than there used to be. It hasn't been so much a problem for me because I think that what happened when the industry did start to fall apart in Los Angeles is it got rid of a lot of the people who maybe weren't so serious about a career in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a job. And now it seems like there's still a lot of opportunity for those people who take it seriously.
Sure. Well, you were going to be my first interview, but you've actually are now my second, and so I have a little additional knowledge to pull from now.
Nice.
I previously spoke to a friend of mine originally from college who reconnected through Facebook and got to talking again, and she said that it's kind of one of those things where you just gotta jump into it. That it's not like with how our parents were, where her and I had a similar experience with our parents, where it was, well, make sure that you have a job lined up there and then move. But in her experience, that she's now had several people move out to LA, and I think she only knows of one who had a job lined up before they actually got here.
Yeah.
That it's kind of more important for you to be here and be available, that sets a precedent over, okay, I've got all this experience, but it would take me however long to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that does come down to weighing out the pros and cons. I mean, if you're sitting somewhere in the country and you're being unemployed anyway, why not be unemployed here and have more opportunity to network and meet people and try to get a job? It's certainly easier to go see people and do job interviews and meet the contacts if you're here. But if you've got something going and you're making some money where you're at, and you you have the luxury of starting with the job here, that's obviously an easier way to go. But
Sure.
it's not. Yeah, you're right. But that's not the way I see a lot of people do it. I do see a lot of people just move down. I certainly didn't have a job when I first started in the industry. I actually was doing something kind of unrelated. I was just a carpenter. I was remodeling houses and stuff in San Francisco, and
Mm-hmm.
I started in the industry as a set builder. But what I did, I was already in San Francisco. I went there with a tote bag and $15. I really had no idea how I was going to make it work, and I was actually, oddly, on my way to Los Angeles when I stopped in San Francisco and found out that Lucasfilm was there, and there were these great motion picture companies there, and there were some opportunities to do what I wanted to do and stay in the Bay Area, which is beautiful. So, in a way, you could say that it took me, 25 years to get to Los Angeles. I just got sidetracked.
That's about the same as me. Right.
Yeah, I was gonna actually, I was gonna move to LA and go to film school, but I was gonna stop in San Francisco and save up some money. So in a way, my plan didn't change. It just took a lot longer than I had originally thought.
You had a little detour on the way.
Yeah, just a minor couple decade detour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
small.
Yeah.
Now, I guess this question would actually be in two ways. What thoughts or concerns did you have leading up to first the transition from, well, what started you, made you decide you wanted to be a carpenter and, set building?
hmm Well, for me at the time, I knew I wanted to do something in entertainment, and since I was already a carpenter, I knew that would be an easy in.
Mhm.
And it kind of was. It did take some work. I had to build a portfolio by building stuff at home and photographing it, because someone asked
Yeah.
me for a portfolio, so that's how I built my portfolio. I just started making it. That's the thing. It's like you can't wait for opportunities, or you can't let some of the rules in society stop you from getting where you want to go. Sometimes you have to bend things a bit, and think outside the box, and that's exactly what I did. And I just knew that getting in as a carpenter, as a set builder, wouldn't lock me in as a set builder for the rest of my career. I was very young, and I knew that I could take that as an opportunity to meet more people, to expand, to demonstrate my motivation, to demonstrate my skills, my ability to troubleshoot, my creativity, and move into other areas and keep growing. And that's exactly what I've done. Because I went into model making, I went into technology, and I've worked on CG features and practical visual effects, stop motion, just everything you can imagine. I've loved it. Loved every second of all of it. Performance capture. I mean, to go from carpentry to performance capture or production design, heading up big crews on shows, that was something, that seemed very far away at the time when you're a carpenter. But looking back at it, it all kind of happened very naturally and thankfully the way I'd hoped it would. So, and now we're getting into content creation here. That's another reason I moved to Los Angeles, is if you want to get into, the pre-production part of motion pictures and you want to create content, this is definitely the place to be, because a lot of the investment money, even if the investors aren't from here, they come here looking for content. A lot of the production companies are here. It's just all the decision makers. I shouldn't say all of them, but a great many decision makers are in Los Angeles. So on that side of things, it's definitely a lot easier to operate here.
And as far as making the transition from the Bay Area to Los Angeles, what was the biggest concern? What was it just being able to, just speed everything up? Was that mainly what made you decide, okay, I just needed to go?
There were a lot of, obviously the slowdown of the industry in the Bay Area is the main reason. I decided to
Mm-hmm.
come down. I just knew that this was still the epicenter. There's still a lot more going on here. The fears I had were pretty substantial. I mean, I really, having worked in LA but not actually lived here, you come down and it looks like sprawl. It just looks like this vast sea of buildings that look similar with, interspersed little strip malls everywhere and taco trucks or whatever. You just have this vision of LA as being just this sprawling, kind of half industrial, half residential city, and it goes on for miles and miles. San Francisco is only 7 miles across, and the Bay Area is pretty compact, really. So it was terrifying. It just seemed very daunting, and I didn't think I knew that many people here.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard of people getting kind of depressed because it can be very isolating to be in such a large city and not know people. So I definitely recommend for anyone coming to be as social as you can be and to meet as many people as you can and go to as many places as you can go, because that's how you can get over that isolation. I was worried about the transition of moving out of my very comfortable small network of creative family members and to this other place where I knew some people, but I don't have the kind of 2-decade connections with the people here as I do in Northern California. So that leaving that behind was terrifying. There was a lot of things that I worried about moving down here. But I will say it was really incredible and unexpected when I got here to see how easy it was to meet people, how it wasn't isolating, how much opportunity there is here. I mean, I always knew that this was, I keep saying it, and I might be even overusing the term epicenter, but I always knew that this was kind of the hub for our industry, but I really didn't have any idea of the extent of it. My first week here was really funny. I went to the grocery store, and I ran into a film production friend of mine on one of the aisles, just randomly, someone I worked with at ILM. And then I also, while I was standing in line, a person in front of me is on their cell phone talking to a producer about getting some footage off to editorial right away. And the person behind me was talking about a producer they had run in with at an audition, and it was like, wow, I'm surrounded by people that work in this industry, and it's kind of all encompassing in certain parts of Los Angeles. Like I live in Burbank, and that's definitely, there's so much going on, and so many people who are there are working in this industry, and I'm constantly running into people from Cartoon Network or Sci-Fi Channel or the Asylum or and Legendary Pictures, and just there's such a vast array and variety of different companies and artists and support companies and equipment companies, and there's just so much that happens here that you see it everywhere, and it made it a lot easier to navigate the landscape, seeing the infrastructure so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I thought I was leaving behind. I thought I was leaving behind 2 decades of knowledge of where to get everything and from who, and knowing everybody at every studio, and it was really scary. But it was actually, once I got down here, it became clear why this is the hub, because it's everywhere and it's so easy. And they do, it is very, very easy to do things here. So, and that's coming from my perspective. I didn't even know where to buy glue. So it was very surprising and positive, and everyone here is also very supportive. I had heard that it was very dog eat dog, and you really have to watch your back, and I had a lot of warnings about Los Angeles. Boy, you got to watch yourself and all this stuff, and that really scared me as well, because I have a thick skin, and I know how to be strong, and I know how to fight for what I want, but I don't want to kind of expend so much energy in that area that I'm taking away from the creative process and the things that I really am in the industry for. So I'm not in it for politics, you know. So that was a little scary, but I haven't really run into that since I've been here. Not saying it's not here. I'm just saying that it's not as pervasive as a lot of people had made it sound, and maybe it used to be, or maybe it's worse in areas that I haven't witnessed yet. But I haven't really run into any of the scary, you know, artist eating people.
Maybe they're full, or
yeah, maybe
there's nobody left. I don't know.
Maybe like War of the Worlds, they just all fell ill from some mysterious disease.
Yes.
I don't know. Now I'm reaching.
yeah. Well, and that answers a question I had later, because, you know, outside looking in, you know, it's always, oh, it's so expensive in LA. Traffic is terrible. And people are jerks.
Yeah. Well, the traffic is terrible.
Right.
Between certain parts of town. So what you do, and this is actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is important. I lucked out. I got a job with a studio that's in Silmar, which is part of Los Angeles, close to Sun Valley, which is only about 15 minutes from Burbank, and I'm reverse commute from downtown. So if you talk to people and you know where you're generally going to be working, you can avoid a lot of the traffic by placing yourself reverse commute, or you know, a lot of there's not a lot of the motion picture industry on the coastal side of Los Angeles. That is probably the most difficult route to navigate, is from, you know, say Burbank to, you know, Santa Monica or something, you know, along the coast. That, all the routes to Santa Monica and that side of town, it definitely take a lot longer than other areas. But I will say that the traffic here is really no different than any other metropolitan area that I've been to. I've, you know, having driven in Portland, having driven in the San Francisco Bay Area, you know, you still have rush hour, you still have traffic accidents, you still have the radio to tell you, you know, where to avoid. It's the same as any major urban center. It's not actually, I don't think, well, in my experience, it hasn't been worse than anywhere I've lived, certainly. So, but it is important to, I think, if you want a quality of life and you don't want to spend a lot of time in your car, choosing a location to live is pretty important.
Yeah. And you're the second that I've talked to, but the third that I've heard that Burbank is a good spot.
Yeah, there's just a lot of companies there. There's a lot of services there. It's safe. You know, you don't hear about people getting their cars broken into a lot there, like you might in Hollywood, or some of the other neighborhoods. There, you know, there's a lot that you can walk to if you're in the right neighborhood too. You know, and it's just clean and quiet. People are friendly, and there's a lot of people in the industry. For our industry, it's really great because there's so many companies right there. I feel like a lot of opportunity to just kind of meet people randomly in your neighborhood, which is great. It's something that certainly would never happen in the Bay Area on a regular basis, but here, boy, you can go to Starbucks, strike up a conversation with them, and odds are, you know, they work in the industry. If you're in Burbank, that's what it's like. You know, that's what it's been like for me.
And for someone who doesn't have, you know, doesn't know anybody, you know, because there are so many companies, and it's just kind of, well, where do you start and who do you try to talk to? Or is it just kind of... That's
a pretty valid question, but the answer is actually so simple. Don't stay home.
Don't stay
Yeah,
home.
I made a promise to myself when I moved to Los Angeles because I feel like, with my creative partners at this studio, these guys have all been here for 25 years. I've been up north for 25 years. So I
Hmm.
have to build a whole new network of people and tap into their network. And I'm kind of building that kind of social network and business network. Uh, Kind of not really from scratch because there were a lot of people in the Bay Area that moved down here first.
Sure.
That really helped. But what was interesting to me is I go to a lot of conventions, pop culture conventions, entertainment conventions. But the pop culture conventions in particular, you get people from the video game industry, you get costumers, you get toy industry people, you get motion picture, television, you get all the comic books, you get all the different forms of entertainment artistry in one place. So meeting people at conventions was great because I didn't know it until I moved here, but a lot of the people I met at conventions actually live here. And so I
Hmm.
landed smack in the middle of a really great network of people instantly. And then the other thing is Facebook actually ends up being pretty important for networking and meeting people. A lot of people in the entertainment industry are on Facebook. Um, and a lot of events that are created that they're trying to draw people from the entertainment industry to are posted as Facebook events.
Hmm.
So I made a promise to myself every single weekend I would go to every event that I could make it um, uh, to try to meet people and to build those relationships and to because even just it's you don't want to meet people and immediately say, hey, you got work, so you
Right.
kind
Right.
of meet everyone, become friends with everyone, get to know people, figure out who you want to work with, who you want to have relationships with, socially or work or what otherwise, and just it's great to be able to hear what everyone else is doing, and there's just so much to be gained by just being around people.
Hmm.
It really kind of helps clarify things in your head, even if they're not contacts. If nothing else, you're building new friendships, which is great. And so, yeah, I would recommend just going to a lot of parties and don't drink heavily because you're no good at conversation drunk.
Right. Or if you are, you won't remember
You
what
might not
worked.
remember. No, seriously, but yeah, I mean, basically, I try to treat all the social events as potential, you know, uh, networking events as well. I don't want to downplay my friendships and say that everyone I meet is for networking purposes because there's certainly people that I am friends with because I'm friends with them because they're cool,
Hmm.
uh, and we get along and we have similar interests and all those great things. Um, but at the same time, I also like to work with my friends. My social life, I guess, and my uh, occupation really kind of mix. I want to work with people I like. I want to be friends with the people I work with, and for the most part, I can do that. And maybe that's a luxury that not all industries have, but I feel like this one is one of those industries because you
Hmm.
need to have trust in the people you're working with, and they need to be able to trust you. And I think that that's where those relationships really come in handy. Um, and it's I don't know. I just love people too. So I love going to these events and meeting new people and talking
Hmm.
to people. And you learn a lot. You learn a lot about talking about how they deal with situations and companies and producers and work and visual effects or whatever it is that you're talking about. Um, Everyone has a different perspective and take on everything. So yeah, I'd say be social. Because it's
Well.
amazing how quickly the network of friends grows. Now it's like
Hmm.
I do the Facebook thing. I'll meet someone and I'll friend them on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, look at that, we have 87 friends in common. And this is a regular thing now because it is oddly, for as big a city as it is, and for as big as this industry is down here, it definitely feels like a very small community, and you'll meet people that know other people all the time, which is
Hmm.
exactly why you also don't want to be a jerk.
Right, right.
because it's also you can't hide your reputation. You
Hmm.
want to keep that squeaky clean.
Right. And so, this is how long have you been in LA now?
I've actually only been here since December. For me, I kind of feel like I'm not going to have um, the full comfort level that I had in the Bay Area for at least, I would say, another 3.5 years. It's kind of, I don't. It's just my feeling about it.
So the honeymoon kind of ends after about 4 years then?
I don't know. I like to still say that I'm new to LA, and then all my friends are like, "No, no, you can't say that anymore. You've been here since December," which is, you know, it's what is that? It's 8 months, 9 months now. So it's like,
Yeah.
I keep saying I'm new. They keep saying I'm not. I still, I'm still willing to say I'm new here for another 3.5 years.
Okay.
But no,
Well,
I think after a year, a lot of people, I have heard a lot of people after a year start to feel more comfortable and it feels more at home. And I
hmm
am certainly starting to. I could see where after a year I could feel like I could call this home.
hmm
Partly because I won't be relying on my GPS to get everywhere.
Right.
It's sometimes the little things.
Yeah. I'm very glad that there's one built into my phone, so.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just also very important to also have a car charger,
Yes.
so because GPS
Absolutely.
does run a lot of battery.
Yeah. I got a
So,
spare battery for mine as well, so
oh,
that
you do? Okay.
yeah, that was really key because you do find yourself using your phone a lot, especially if you are attending a lot of events. I usually go to like 2 events during the week on weeknights. I just try not to
hmm
stay out too late. And then I also go to, I would say, 3 to 4 events on the weekends. And I'm always mapping my because it's not just a great way to meet people, but it's also a great way to learn Los Angeles
hmm
because you're constantly going to different places, you know, and it gives you a lot more exposure to driving around and meeting new people than you would get just sitting at home.
Yeah. Now, I get the impression from you that, you're very social, you say you love hearing people's story and that kind of thing. But is that something that came naturally, or has it been an ongoing process where you're like, okay, if I'm going to, make this work, I gotta be more social?
Well, I kind of know that that's what I have to do, but I'm very fortunate in that I am a very social person. I really do genuinely love people. I love being
Hmm.
around people. I love interacting with people. I think that the things we gain from each other are tremendous. Um, so so yeah, I am. I guess I've always been that way. I've always been social. I've always wanted to hang out with people. I've always wanted to be around. But I feel like that's kind of why I'm in the industry as well. For the sides that I always work in, it's a very collaborative thing. I work on
Hmm.
teams. I'm not a singular person working and doing everything myself. I'm on a
Right.
team of people. We all participate and work together to create something very enormous and spectacular and big, like these movies.
Hmm.
So it's been beneficial to kind of approach it that way. I do know a lot of people though that are in the industry that aren't socially the same as I am, and
Hmm.
they do just strictly they don't mix. I guess for them they don't mix the social and the business so much. For me, it's all one big happy family of people. But for those people, I do notice that they try to compartmentalize their lives, and that's what's comfortable. And you just have to do what's comfortable for you. But
Right.
it definitely pays to make an effort to interact with people.
Right. And
People are neat.
I ask that just because I know for me, I I enjoy being social and that kind of thing, but I just find that I kind of just have a gauge, and once I reach that gauge, I'm like, okay, I need a little alone time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I feel like I get that without trying
Hmm.
enough to where I don't need to seek it out, I guess. But I also, is if you know, in reference to that gauge, if I had a gauge with that analogy, I would say mine is set pretty far over the amount of time I
Sure.
need by myself is like, tiny, tiny.
Hmm. So you're 8 months or so in. We don't know the exact, but um, you
Well,
say
because
that.
the reason I don't have an exact time is because it didn't
Hmm.
happen. It wasn't like I'm moving to LA on this day and now I'm in LA. It
Right.
was like months of my traveling back and forth to LA for meetings and for jobs, and I kept going back and forth so much it was like a commute.
Hmm.
And then eventually I was here like once a week or twice a week or a couple weeks at a time, and so it didn't feel like there was a definitive date that I moved to LA. It kind of happened over
It was
maybe the
kind of
course of
like
a
getting
year.
into a really warm bath, just real slow.
Yes, yeah, I had time to acclimate.
Okay, I got you. But when you came down, didn't have a job, what would you say was what finally was like, okay, think this will kind of work out a little bit?
For me, it was just timing. You know, things had kind of fallen. Like I said, I was going back and forth for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it just enough kind of things fell in place. And for me, I did have a job. I came down here to New Deal Studios, so
Oh, okay.
and that was kind of the thing that was like, okay, maybe I can do this now because I talked to them and they said, come on down,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, and work with us. So here I am, and it's great. Great. This company's been awesome for me because they do so many different things. It's a full production studio. So they have an art department, they have a CG department, they have a practical effects division, and they're also in education. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
I know
so
I've
many
been
other.
seeing their um, their title card a lot more as of late. So I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely,
um,
and it's growing.
hmm.
So,
So you got job. Um, do you still have any continuing thoughts or fears, even though by all and looking in, it would seem as though you have something steady.
yeah. Well, no, I wouldn't say I have anything steady. I'm with New Deal Studios as a creative director. So what we do is we negotiate for projects. We do consulting. We try to land work, and then we get paid when we do the work. So it's
Okay.
not, they do everything they can to obviously give me as much work as possible. Sometimes someone else, one of the other creative directors might land a project. I'll work with them as an art director, or maybe I'm a construction coordinator, or maybe it's just whatever way we can facilitate the work.
Hmm.
That's what we all do for each other, um, and then we just try to get as much work as we can. But the entire most companies and most entertainment industry professionals are project based.
Hmm.
So what that means is you work on something until that movie is done or that commercial is done. Then that's it. Now you're looking for the next thing. So you're kind of always looking for what's next. That's
Right.
one of the reasons why I'm involved. That's the great thing about here because I teach with the Stan Winston School,
Hmm.
and then I'll work on a movie, and then maybe I'll work on a commercial, and then between those I might take a break and work on some of my own personal projects, and it allows me a lot more variety and freedom in this scenario. It's not for everybody.
Hmm.
I love it because I like variety, and I do like the opportunity to be able to do my own things and you know uh, take time off. I've been
Right.
doing
Right.
this a long time, and it is exhausting sometimes if you get a long run. So um, that's and for me actually the time off now has been more important than I think it's ever been in my career because I am trying to reestablish myself in a new place. So it's really great to be able to take time to learn the city and to meet people and to have a social life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's you know, it's funny. There was a guy that I did a lecture with at a benefit once. That was one of the founders of Colossal Pictures. His name slips my mind, but he talked about doing lectures for students, and he had said that he would stand in front of the classroom and he would say, you know, how many of you can imagine yourselves doing something else for a living besides working in film and television? And about half the class would raise their hand. And he would say, okay, you guys need to get the fuck out of here. Forget the language. His, not mine. But no, that was, to me, that really stuck in my head. And you'll hear me say it a lot because tell that story, because it's so true. Like, if you want to work in this industry, you have to want it more than any other job. Because you know, his whole point was, if you can imagine yourself doing something else, you should do that, because that's an option, and that option is going to be easier than working in the entertainment industry. It is filled with time between projects, so you have to become good at saving money. Right. You have to get used to uncertainty. You know, to this day, I am uncertain if I will be working, you know, next week. You know, I am uncertain if I'm going to have work next year. I mean, even with some of the biggest, most successful studios and companies in the world, they will shut down divisions. They will lay off enormous groups of people. They will finish a movie and then let go of half their staff. I mean, that's what this industry is like. So all you can do is be the best artist and the best technician and the best, you know, team player as you can be. Work hard, show up on time, finish your work, contribute, and, you know, basically do your job. And if you do that, you'll get a reputation. You'll get as many jobs as there are, and that's all you can ever hope for. Yeah. You know? So, fortunately for me, I've been doing it for so long that you know, and so much of it is word of mouth. It gets easier as the longer you're in the industry to get work, because everyone kind of says, oh, I know a person that does this, or I know a person who does that. And, you know, you do have to let go of the notion of being humble, you know, to a certain degree. Being in this business, especially in Los Angeles, does rub some people the wrong way, especially on Facebook, because it feels like people are showing off all the time. And I'm sure there are people out there that just get sick of seeing people saying, hey, look what I made. Hey, look what I made. You know, but you kind of have to do that, because if you don't show people what you do, what you make, what you have to offer, no one will know what you do, make, or have to offer. So you have to show that, show your work and show it off and make sure everyone sees it. And then when they need that, they call you. And that's been very successful for me. So, you know, the things that your parents teach you about being humble don't always apply. It is important to give other people credit. You know, like, you know, I mentioned, you know, we work on teams. You know, right. There are a lot of talented people in this business, and you're just one of them. But so in that regard, you don't want to take away from anyone else's contribution, but you can't be humble to the point where you're afraid to show people your work. Right. So, you know, think about, like, the industry is about really showing everyone your work. Like, you know, the movie companies would make no money if they didn't show the movies that they made. Right. You know, so selectively humble. You're a part of that machine, so it's important. Right. It feels weird sometimes. It does feel weird to constantly be saying, hey, you know, look at this, you know. I'm glad I'm not an actor, because then it would be literally, look at me. You know? Right. But that's why, and you hear about actors being criticized. You hear about musicians being criticized, and they're constantly saying, look at me. It's because, you know, we're kind of hardwired in this business to do that. Right. Because otherwise, it's like, well, what do you do? It's like, well, yeah, it's very easy to become irrelevant or you know, to have people forget about you, and there's a lot of people. You know, this is the humbling thing. There's a lot of people that could do your job, no
Hmm.
matter what it is. There's a lot of people who can fill your shoes. So how do you stand out among all those people? You can't hide behind them. So
Right.
you have to put yourself out there, and you have to try. You know, it's probably one of the stranger lessons that I've learned. Um,
And does it just get easier over time, or just something you kind of get used to, or is it always just kind of something that you just feel like you have to do?
it's something you feel like you have to do. It for me, it always feels weird. I think it depends on the person.
Hmm.
You know. But yeah, it was yeah, it has been, and it continues to be successful to show, you know, kind of show off.
Yeah.
And to talk about it and to meet people and say, this is what I do, you know, and you know, it's an interesting thing, because it does go so against so much of what you were taught by your parents.
Right.
There's great lessons that they teach you about work ethic, but that's being humble. I mean, you don't want to be a jerk, and you don't want to be a show off, but you kind of have to do a little bit, you know.
Hmm.
So there's a line there, a line that you never thought you would be thinking about, you know.
Right.
That's, you know, part of being
Something that you
freelance,
have to learn.
skating that line, and it's hard. It's hard to know when you've crossed that line, and when people just think you're like showing off. I think it depends on the personality too. I think some people are just more likely to criticize other people, and so you have to kind of not listen to people who are quick to criticize, and stick with the people who you trust to tell you the truth, you know,
Yeah.
and an opinion that you agree with, of course, too, I guess.
Sure,
So
because with a lot of people, it can be just an effort to mask what their insecurities are.
right, right, yeah, and that's the thing. If you know, I guess the best thing you can do is gauge it by your employer or people giving you work, and those are the people you really want to,
Hmm.
because the people hiring you are the opinions that really matter on that
Right.
side of things.
Right.
So,
Not some random person on Facebook.
well, yeah, not some random person on Facebook, and certainly not someone who's trying to get the same job you're trying to get. So,
Right. Right.
not saying that it's that competitive. I hate to look at it that way, because it's not. But I'm not competitive, but I do know people who are, and they are very quick to criticize people around them
Hmm.
because they're
Well,
competitive.
and I get the
And it
impression
sucks.
from you that
But
it's necessary to a certain extent
to what? To,
to to be a little bit competitive. Maybe
yeah, I
not
don't know.
competitive
I don't.
being the main word, but like you said,
Yeah, I
say
kind of.
that you can do what needs
I
to be
kind of
done.
don't like the idea of being competitive, because to me it's not really about competition, because we are working in teams, and you really need allies more than anything,
Hmm.
um, more than you need competitors. You know,
Right.
um, I really don't uh, like the idea of being competitive, because I feel like if you do good work, you work hard, and you show people your work, and it really is about that, then then that's not being competitive. That's just doing good work and showing people your work.
Hmm.
Competitive, I think, is when you do start to tear other people down, where you
Sure.
do try to climb over other people and sacrifice them over your own career. And I don't. The reason I don't believe that that is necessary is because I don't. I've certainly never intentionally done it to anybody, and I don't plan on it. I don't, you know, I don't think it's necessary. If you do good work, people will hire you for your good work, not because
Hmm.
you're capable of tearing somebody else down.
Right. Well, and
That's a
it would
valuable life lesson,
ultimately
because
be
what you'll
lonely at the top if you had to tear everyone else down to get there.
right. Well, not only that, but that just means that you're not good enough to do the work.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that you're not confident in your own abilities enough to just let your work speak for yourself. Now you have to tear someone else down because you feel like that will, that's what the advantage you need. No, I don't know. I just don't understand the mentality. I don't think it's genuine. You know, um, I've survived on having allies and having creative partners and having teams and friends, and like I said, I refer to a lot of the people I work with in this industry as family, and that's what's moved my career forward. Certainly, a lot of the people who were hypercritical and tried to burn people down along the way ended up not working for very long in the industry, because you get a reputation for being that person. Because here is, if you're hanging out with someone and they start talking negatively about 12 different people they work with, the thing that always occurs to you and anyone else talking to them is, well, what are they saying when I leave the room?
Sure.
So you don't want to be that person. So I guess that's what I equate being competitive. I think if you want to compete with someone, compete with yourself. Try to always one up your last work. Try to constantly improve upon yourself and beat your own records, and that's where the focus should be, not on someone else.
What advice would you have for people to be more like that? Because I know, in talking with a number of people, and I feel like it can be kind of natural to compare yourself to others and be like, oh, I wish I was as good as that, and it can, depending on how you take it, but more often than not, it seems like it can be discouraging when it's like, oh, I'm not as good as that.
Yeah, I think focusing on your successes, focusing on the future, have goals. Don't expect things to happen overnight. Acknowledge each of the steps you make towards that goal. I often liken a career as, a container ship, because it takes a long time to build up momentum. It takes a long time to stop. You got to take wide turns. That's what your career is like. Things don't just happen overnight. Your career is your life. It's lifelong. So, you do have to kind of push in a direction and just keep, the ships, when they cross the Atlantic or the Pacific, they know where they're going, and they're constantly kind of pointing themselves back in that direction, even though the tide's pushing them this way or that. You're constantly renegotiating your direction to get to that goal, and your career is the same way. You should just constantly be, evaluating what you need to do to get to that goal. Don't expect it to happen overnight, and you won't be disappointed. And yeah, just really relish in your successes every day. Acknowledge what you did today. What did you do? You filed 50 papers. Great. You filed 50 papers. Tomorrow, you're going to file 51 papers. That's your goal. That's your competition. It's not about how many papers someone else filed. That's really irrelevant.
Right.
So.
Well, you mentioned we got on the topic of goals. When if you were to look back 25 years now?
Yeah.
What was your goal? Was it being a creative director and instructor, or how did that start?
Yeah, interestingly, a lot that I've had to set new goals. I'm very fortunate in that way, because when I started in the industry, my goal was set on becoming an industrial light magic model maker. I wanted to do visual effects. Star Wars inspired me to do it, and coincidentally, when I got there, they started working on the new Star Wars movies, and I got to work on the special editions. So I actually got to work on the very movies that got me into the business.
Right.
And here I was, in my 20s, working on Star Wars as a model maker in visual effects, pretty much reaching my lifelong goal. So that's when I realized that maybe I could dream bigger. And I did. I started making much bigger goals, and I decided I wanted to do a graphic novel. I spent 4 years doing a graphic novel. I'm quite proud of the way it turned out. Again, working with a very great team of creative people to achieve a very big project that I had a hand in. The education, I kind of fell into that because just like this, and one of the reasons I suggested we record this is that I get asked questions all the time by single individual people.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point where I got asked the same question so many times, I thought, boy, if there was a way that I could get this out there so I could answer the questions that are most common for a huge group of people all at one time, it would be a huge, efficient time saver for me.
Right.
So maybe from that regard, it was a selfish act. But I decided that education was good because if I go on a show or put something on the internet and 1,000 people can see the one question that's answered, it's a lot better than my just answering the one person at a time via email or Facebook or whatever, And sometimes I don't have time to answer questions at all. So it was a way to kind of, like I said, give back to the creative community and help other people succeed without taking the time to individually speak to each one. Because I do want help, I do, and that goes along with liking people.
Right, right.
So yeah, the educational thing just kind of happened on its own. Being a creative director kind of happened the same way that being a supervisor happened on projects, and that is, I was always a generalist even within fabrication, and then in design and in computer graphics, technology, and pipeline between technology and practical. I was always growing and learning and expanding and just looking at the entire industry as not just work but a school. And I was going to continually learn new things and become more valuable, and that would get me more work, and that would be way more fun. It would be more interesting, and that was my goal, was to learn as much as I can. It's still my goal. And once you have a broad enough knowledge of the filmmaking process, you start getting jobs overseeing all those areas of the filmmaking process. A lot of people look at directors and supervisors and producers as people who just kind of point and tell people what to do. But they can't do that without the knowledge of each person's job, at least peripherally. They have to know enough about the whole process to tell people what to do. Otherwise, they're going to make bad decisions, and they're not going to be a good leader, and they're not going to have successful projects. So, the leadership side of things just kind of happened based on, I think, also because I like people. I work very hard to make sure people get along with each other, and I kind of understand how to talk to individuals out of the idea that I care about them. And I think you can get really far if you genuinely care about people, because people can sense that, and then they want to help you. They don't want to work against you because you're on the same team, and they know it. So that kind of happened on its own, and I've really enjoyed it. It's not something I set out to do as a goal when I started, but it was something that I set out for a goal to do later. And now, it's one of the reasons I want to get into content creation, because I want to take on bigger and bigger projects, and I want to take on bigger and bigger crews of artists, because I feel like I have, a growing capacity to deal with these situations, and I want to use it, and I want to grow. I want to keep expanding my abilities and expanding my experience, and so a lot of what has happened after I reached my goal of being a model maker has been a little more organic, and I set little goals here and there. But yeah, I'm still growing. I'm still wanting to do more stuff. I think directing is definitely something I want to get into. Content creation is definitely something I've been more involved in, and I want to continue being involved in. So we'll see where it all goes. So far, everything has been spectacular. So I have no reason to think it's
a pie in the sky, pinnacle goal for your life.
Yeah. Well, I even ran my own studio for a while, which was great, So yeah, if you put everything into your work, it's amazing what you can get out of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Was there, or is there a turning point within all of this where you had the realization that you were actually, gaining ground instead of just, turning the gears, that you were actually gaining some ground?
Uh, yeah, I don't know that there was a turning point because I feel like I've been trying to gain ground since I started.
Mm-hmm.
Humbly as a carpenter. I started as a carpenter, and I always
Yeah.
wanted to gain ground. I always wanted to learn and grow and do new things and take on more challenges, and I've always done that. There have been some pretty significant turning points in the sense that I've had to reflect on where I am and really, really think about the important decisions moving forward when Industrial Light and Magic closed their practical division, for example. I'd been
Mm-hmm.
there for 10 years, and when I was there, I was so happy. I really thought I was going to retire at Industrial Light and Magic.
Mm-hmm.
I had no need or desire to go to any other company. And it was an extremely gratifying job, spectacular people, great projects. There was just nothing I could think of that was that would cause me to want to change. Certainly,
Mm-hmm.
life has its challenges, and but nothing that would have made me want to change jobs. But that was a turning point. I started running my own company at that point intermittently, and that kind of grew out of necessity, I think, and also my desire to work on my own projects and to do content creation to help other indie filmmakers and work on something outside of the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And then working for Disney for 4 years. That was another. I was working for Image Movers Digital, which was a Bob Zemeckis and Disney company, with Doug Chang on his team, and that was spectacular. Again, never thought I would leave that company, and then they shut that down. So same thing, Skellington Productions, when we did Nightmare Before Christmas and James and Giant Peach, we had no idea that after 2 films they would shut us down. So
Yeah.
these things do happen, and it's nobody's fault. And I don't have any hard feelings, but those were the kind of pivotal points in my career where I decided it was time for a change.
Was there a period of time before you're like, okay, I need to move on, where it was just kind of, for lack of a better word, shit, what happened here?
Oh yeah, it was those points.
Yeah.
It's funny because I decided. It was kind of, as soon as I said it, I'm like, I said that wrong. I didn't decide to change. It was very much necessity. It's like, okay, the rug's been pulled out from under you. What do you do now?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it felt like at the time. And fortunately, I just always look up to what is the next opportunity. So if I'm going to move to another company, I'm going to move to another position. What is that other thing I want to do? I try not to move sideways, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to move if I can. You do, and that's the thing. I'm not saying I'm above sweeping floors or anything like that, because I will do any position within a film production. You can't let your ego get in the way of doing what is necessary to get the job done, regardless of what your position is. In my mind, that's the way I look at it. You do have to know when to delegate, but outside of that, there should be no ego involved in that decision.
Right.
But what I do try to do, I do make it a goal. If I lose a job at a company, I do think very carefully about what is my next move.
Mm-hmm.
And will that next move help me get to my new goals? Again, keeping that container ship on course.
Right.
So, and that's just keeping an eye on opportunities to move in the direction you want to move. And for some people that is moving sideways. I call it moving sideways. Some people might just call it sustaining. And that's fine too. It's a personal decision. That's just me, because I push hard. You know, it does make it hard to have a family. It does make it hard to you know, have the kind of friendships that people have outside of our industry. I will say that those things are probably more challenging in our industry than other industries, because a lot of people, especially in a family unit, want stability.
Right.
You know,
That's
this
that's
industry
another one
does
of the
not
scary.
offer stability, and it's a sad reality. But you know, that is something that should be weighed out for young people thinking about doing this for a living. You know, if getting married and having 6 kids is a priority, then this is likely not the career for you.
Right.
You know, I don't mean to be a naysayer, but I won't say it's impossible even. I'll just say it's extremely difficult.
Right. And it's kind of difficult to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why, you know, you do have to be careful how much in life you try to take on. You know, at a certain point, you know, I have run into this situation before, and it's one of these things that will happen to everyone eventually, I think. You do run into those situations occasionally where you're like, wow, okay, there's so many things happening. I have to decide where I'm going to fail.
That's a big thing.
That is a tough pill to swallow, but it's a valuable life lesson, because occasionally you are faced with a situation where you have to decide what are you going to let go of. What are you going to fail at? You know, and you got to decide what's most important to that job or to that situation.
Right.
That's you know, I've run into that situation more since 2008, since the economy collapsed in 2008, than I did earlier in my career. But you're definitely faced with you know, kind of the Kobayashi Maru scenario. You do hit the no-win situation sometimes. And so I'm gonna, you know, another way to word it is to say that, like, where are you going to compromise where you don't really want to compromise, and things like that. You know, creatively or financially or socially or whatever.
Right.
You know.
Well, to go in the defense of the industry, seems like so often people can be blindsided if they're not, you know, if they are in quote-unquote stable jobs, to just one day be laid off. You know, your job has been, you know...
Oh, it can happen. It can happen to everybody. It just doesn't happen as regularly to people in other jobs, I think. It depends on the industry. I mean, there are industries that mirror ours perfectly in that sense, but you know, we are faced with the idea that it's inevitable.
Right. That's, if anything, the upside, I would say.
Yeah. That part of it is predictable. It is predictable that you will lose the job you have as soon as the movie is done. You just got to hope that you're moving on to the next one.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And there are those companies. I mean, even the companies that are you know, let's just say Disney. You work for Disney, and you have you're in their animation division, and you've had your job for 20 years, and you just roll from one movie to the next, or maybe you work in promotion, so you're always promoting something. But even those positions, you know, from time to time, you know, those ones are, you know, more like, I think, the normal jobs out in the world. But I think even still, it's more likely that you'll get, you know, you'll have some kind of career change frequently in the industry than other industries, because it's fickle, you know.
Well, good or bad, what would you say has been your most memorable experience so far?
In LA?
Yeah. The question I wrote, I did say LA, but I'm kind of interested just in general in your case.
Well, yeah, that's you know, actually, I think I like the LA question because it narrows it down a little. No, it's so difficult to pick like people ask me what's my favorite movie that I've worked on or what's my favorite there's so many amazing things that happen every day and on every show and so many people and it's just so much going on that it's really hard to pick single things. I will say I'm going to go ahead and narrow it down to just LA.
Go for it. Go for it.
Because I mean, if I were to talk about my career, I would say working at each of the companies has had its peak, and I would say working for ILM was huge. Working on Nightmare Before Christmas was probably my favorite movie experience. Up to working with Bob Zemeckis' group at IMD, that was also fantastic. Also Disney, so maybe that says something. But the really, really unbelievable surprise to me about moving to LA, which has been kind of fun and I feel a little youthful about, is theme parties. Theme parties are very common in Los Angeles. So people going to parties dressed up like it's Halloween.
Yeah.
Happens like once a month.
I know. I've noticed.
I've got a closet
Instagram
with costumes.
Yeah.
That has been a lot of fun to kind of just let loose and wear silly things. No, because it's yeah, but that's been very interesting. It's more common than I would imagine. It's been a lot more fun. It's actually the whole costume thing in general has, I think, culturally has changed a lot. It used to be that as an adult, dressing up in costume is kind of frowned upon or considered immature until Halloween. Once a year, it's publicly it's socially acceptable to dress up in costume for most people.
Yeah.
There are still people that won't, and
right.
probably shouldn't. But
that's another topic.
Halloween was always my favorite holiday, and now moving to LA, it's more socially acceptable here than it is certainly in other places, and conventions have also become that. Now when you go, we shot an episode of Castle, and I remember when they had all the extras come in for shooting. There was an episode of Castle. Sorry, I'll back up. There was an episode of Castle where a murder took place at a convention. And a buddy of mine, Chris Farmer, was an art director on that show, and they were doing a convention, and he knew I did real conventions, so he called me to help round up some people to set up this fake convention, and I set up my booth. And then the extras came in, and half of them were in costume. And I was like, no, not that many people dress up in costume at conventions, That's not completely accurate. Whatever, it's a TV show. But the funny thing is, I always think of that episode now and shooting that because now I go to a convention and I'd say a full third of the people coming to conventions are wearing costumes. Like in Phoenix Comic Con, where we had met each other in person. A good deal of the people going there, full families, adults, kids alike, all dressed up as their favorite superheroes or movie characters. And
the costumes are getting really good too.
They're getting really good, and they're becoming really common. And in Los Angeles, there's a lot of costumers and people who work professionally doing it that go to parties and throw parties that are costume parties and masquerades and all kinds of things like that. And it's kind of fun here because it's what people do professionally, and then they get to do it socially also. And it's I would say that was the most unexpected surprise of moving to Los Angeles is the number of theme parties that I get to go to, and how much fun they are. I really had no idea.
Now it's Halloween once a month instead of once a year. Yeah, highly recommend it. Very nice.
Like go relax, just go have fun. Yeah.
So, that potentially answers my second to last question then.
Okay.
But maybe you have another answer. Aside from the work, what would you say you enjoy about living in LA?
Boy, Boy, it is. You know, it's a difficult question to answer because there's not a single thing. You
Hmm.
know, like I mentioned about the span of my career, it's hard to single out something when it's so many things. I
Sure.
think that my favorite thing about LA is just how surprising it's been. People have been incredible. Uh, you know, just everything I thought I knew about Los Angeles was pretty much wrong, and I love that. I love that it's been so easy to meet people. I love that people have been very warm and welcoming and not, um, you know, very positive. The amount of I had heard that the industry had completely collapsed here, and maybe, you know, I didn't live here, so I didn't see what they're comparing it to, but certainly comparing it to the San Francisco Bay Area, the film community here is thriving a lot more. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more opportunity. There's just it's a lot easier to navigate. There's a lot more support for filmmaking. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes when you're on location, you can't find a store that's even open. You know, at the right hour. Here, it seems
Right.
like there's a lot of places open late. There's a lot of districts with very specific things, like there's a feather district. You know, like it's crazy the amount of you really start to understand why LA is such a big entertainment hub, and
Hmm.
and a lot of it has to do with the support, the talent, the accessibility of people, materials, knowledge. It's all here. So that's been spectacular. I think just the surprises have been my favorite thing about LA, and the fact that it wasn't like I'd imagined it. You know,
Hmm.
so and it's
Sounds like it
exciting.
was in
It's
good
exciting to
ways.
be in all that and to be a part of that big, you know, creative community, which is you know uh, you know the part of LA that I'm in.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some secret parts I don't know about. There probably are. I mean, it's a very rich city. It's very rich culturally. A lot of different nationalities and
Hmm.
little um, districts and areas, and there's a lot that I haven't explored yet, which is also pretty spectacular. The museums here are mind blowing. I mean, it's just every time I turn the corner, there's something, some kind of surprise and some kind of really cool thing. So I think I'm going to love it here for a long time because there's so much to do too outside of work. You know, they have
Yeah.
a space shuttle. Space shuttle. And
I
see the
didn't know
space
that.
shuttle. You have dinosaur bones in the next building over. No, it's really cool. Yeah, there's a lot here.
Very cool. Well, this, I don't know how long you thought it was going to be, but this was pleasantly longer than I thought it was.
Okay, good.
And
Yeah, I had no idea either. I don't know how it's been over an hour. That's amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, good.
Well, hopefully anyone who watches this will feel the same way.
Yeah,
Um,
I hope so too. Hopefully, it's not just like boring and wow. When does this end? Who is this guy?
holy crap! Well, to wrap it up, then, I would say, what advice would you have to anyone considering moving out to LA?
Yeah, some of it I covered already. I would definitely say, you know, if you can come with the support of friends,
Hmm.
highly recommend it. Do not stay home and lock yourself in the house when you get here. Make an effort to go out. Make an effort to meet people. Uh, I would say, and make an effort to drive around, because the thing that makes driving around in LA frustrating is not knowing where you're going when you first get here. But once you start to learn the shortcuts and navigate the city, that becomes easier. It's not as maybe stressful as it is when you first arrive. Um, uh, find a place that is close to where you want to be. Location is important, very, very important in LA. Um, you know, and just if you get opportunities, really do the best possible work you can do. Even if it's something you don't have any interest in, even if it's something really easy. Some people don't like to do things because they're not challenging and they feel like they're underutilized or something like that. You got to really kind of step out of that and just know that if someone asks you to sweep the floors and you do a bad job because you're above it, they're going to think, well, boy, this person can't even sweep floors. I'm certainly not going to give them more responsibility. So the way you prove yourself is by doing a good job at whatever you do. You know, I don't know. I would just say, you know, just seize the day, you know, in every way you can. I mean, there's so much here for you if you look for it, if you take it, you know, if you go out and find it, you know. It's really up to you. I think that's what I would say to anyone moving here. I mean, I guess you could say that anywhere, but I mean, there's so much, it's such a rich place to live that I think the way it differs than other locations is the fact that there is such variety.
Very nice, very nice. I'd say that pretty well covers it then.
All right.
Well, that was me, John Decker, talking to Fon Davis, who I enjoyed very much, and I hope that you guys did as well. And until the next one, have a good day, I guess.
All right.